This bill breaks an election promise. It imposes a new capital gains tax. It puts a new capital gains tax on family homes. And it increases these taxes. It breaks these promises without any clear evidence about who will benefit. In the last election campaign, members opposite, Jacinda Ardern, the Right Honourable, the Honourable Grant Robertson, were definitive. They said Labor will not introduce a capital gains tax. In fact, the Honourable Grant Robertson went one step further. He was very definitive and made an absolute commitment that Labor would not adjust the bright line capital gains tax. Now, despite the revisionist history we have heard in this House today, that is exactly what is happening. Under urgency, this government is ramming through a breach of its commitment to New Zealand voters, and those opposite should hang their heads in shame. Let us be very clear. When National introduced a bright line test at a 2-year limit, it was specifically for the purpose of stopping speculation and property flipping. But what we see in the law that is being passed in this House tonight is something that will target a broad sweep of New Zealanders. It will impose a capital gains tax on people who are choosing to own a residential property, to rent it out, to be good landlords, to save for their retirement. They have no intention of becoming property speculators, of becoming flippers, of becoming developers. No, they are just good landlords providing a rental property. They will now be captured by a capital gains tax, and that is Labor's doing. And to say that this is somehow a policy that National introduced is farcical and it's desperate. So we have to ask ourselves, why is Labor taking this step? Why are they breaking an election promise? Now, what we've heard from our members opposite is that this is to make housing more affordable, and it's to give first home buyers a better start. OK, so let's see, is that actually what this new capital gains tax will achieve? Because actually there's very inconclusive advice on what impact the tax will have on the two main components of housing affordability. The first is house prices. Well, actually, we haven't had a single definitive statement from the Minister of Finance or any member opposite about what impact this new tax will have on house prices. So the jury's out on that one. The second component of housing affordability is rents. And I tell you what, if you're a first home buyer, this matters a lot, because rent determines how much money you have left at the end of each week to save for your deposit. So when rents go up, as they have under Labor, $120 a week since Labor came to office, that affects housing affordability. So we turn to what the officials say about what the impact of this capital gains tax will be on these two core issues, house prices and rents. Now, the first thing that is shocking about this is that the regulatory impact assessment of this bill, which gives us a window into what officials think about it, is that Treasury say they didn't have time to form a view on what this new provision would do. That is shocking. Here we have a major breach of an election promise on an issue that will affect tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of New Zealanders, and our main Treasury advisors haven't even been given time to form a view. But what they do say is that, quote, tax settings are not the primary driver of problems in the housing market. Now, we know that. New Zealanders know that. New Zealanders know that actually what needs to happen here is that a housing shortage needs to be addressed with new houses being built. But Labor stuffed that up. Kiwi Build, which was their idea of how to get houses built, the grand promises, you remember, Michael Wood, you remember promising 100,000 homes? Well, you mucked that up, didn't you? You actually only managed to build just under 800. So they worked out...
The member will not bring the Speaker into the debate.
My apologies, Madam Speaker. So Labor know that they're not really very good at getting houses built, so instead they've turned to tax. And the officials say that this tax policy, quote, to quote Treasury, may put upward pressure on rents. They then go on to say that it's very difficult to see how this policy will interact with the other components of Labor's housing package and what impact that will have on house price affordability. So what we have is a broken promise, grand objectives in terms of what this new tax will achieve, and yet no evidence that it will have an impact on the two major indicators of housing affordability. You'd think you'd have better grounds for breaking a promise. The other area that is very significant and that we have chosen to highlight is that this breaks a promise that has been long-standing on the family home. Just yesterday, Grant Robertson said in no uncertain terms that the Bright Line test does not and will not affect the family home. And yet, at the very same time as he was making that promise to New Zealanders, he was also introducing a specific change in this bill to ensure that thousands more people's family homes will in fact be captured by the Bright Line capital gains tax. I want to step you through the change he's made because I think that it is an absolute case of a finance minister sneaking something in, hoping people won't notice. Well, we've noticed and New Zealanders need to know about it. The rules used to be that you were only captured by the Bright Line test if you rented out your home for more than 50% of the time to which that test applied. Would only be subject to the Bright Line test if for more than half the time they owned it, they rented it out. So in the case of someone who owned a house for 9 years, if they rented it out for 4.5 years, they would have faced a tax obligation under the 10-year test. But what Grant Robertson has done is he said, no, I'm going to be far more punitive. Anyone who rents out their house for more than 12 months will now be captured by my Bright Line test. Now, members opposite have been dismissive about this, but let's think about the thousands of families, the new home buyers who are going to be buying houses in the next few months, and the impact it will have on them. They will be brought into the capital gains tax regime. Let's talk about who these people are. It's people who relocate for a temporary period for work, maybe because they have to work on an emergency management scenario or help out at an MIQ, and in order to make ends meet while they're doing that, they rent out their family home. Well, too bad, bad luck. Under this government, they will face a capital gains tax. Let's talk about the family in tragic circumstances whose child needs medical treatment at Starship Hospital. The family need to relocate for a period, they need to stop work, and they have to rent their house out for 13 months to make ends meet. Well, what Putua Williams, the Honourable, wants to see happen is that family face a capital gains tax. Well, we say on this side of the House that that's wrong. The government shouldn't try and sneak through that sort of a change.